Daniel Reed pressed his face against the shuttle window and watched stars blur past. The transport would reach the Galactic Academy in 20 minutes. Around him, students from a dozen different worlds chatted nervously about their first semester. Most of them kept glancing at the large metal container strapped to the seat beside Daniel. A Vorlani student sitting across the aisle finally worked up the courage to speak. Her translator device clicked softly before her words came through. "What do you have in that box?" Daniel smiled. "My dog." The Vorlani's face tentacles curled inward, which Daniel had learned meant confusion. "Dog? What is dog?" "A companion animal from Earth. We're supposed to bring our pets for the xenobiology program, right?" Several nearby students shifted away from the container. Something inside it scraped against the metal floor. A low rumble echoed through the cabin, deep enough to feel in the chest. The Vorlani's skin changed from blue to pale gray. "That sound," she whispered. "Is that your pet?" "Yeah, she's probably just stretching. Long trip for her, too." An announcement chimed through the shuttle. They were approaching the docking bay. Daniel felt his stomach flip with excitement. He had worked 3 years to get accepted into the Academy's comparative biology program. The application process alone had taken 8 months. Now he was finally here, floating in orbit around Tellus 7 with the best students from 40 different species. The docking procedure took another 15 minutes. When the airlock finally opened, Academy staff waited to greet them. A Prelian instructor stood at the front of the welcoming committee. 8 arms gestured gracefully as students filed past. Each arm had a different purpose, Daniel remembered from his prep materials. 2 for fine manipulation, 2 for carrying, 4 for communication. "Welcome, welcome," the Prelian's translator announced. "I am Professor Quinn. You will all report to Orientation Hall 7. Bring your companion animals. We begin assessments immediately." Daniel grabbed the container's handle and followed the crowd. The thing weighed almost as much as he did, even with the wheeled base. Other students carried much smaller cases. Some just had their pets sitting on their shoulders or floating beside them in containment bubbles. The orientation hall had high ceilings and walls made of some clear material that showed the planet below. Tellus 7 looked peaceful from up here. All green continents and blue oceans. Nothing like the pictures Daniel had seen of other worlds. Some planets in the galaxy were nothing but ice. Others were covered in acidic clouds. Earth sat somewhere in the middle, which apparently made it more dangerous than most people realized. Professor Quinn moved to the center of the room. All 8 arms spread wide. The companion bonding assessment is crucial to your studies here. We learn how different species form relationships with other creatures. This teaches us about empathy, communication, and trust. Please, one at a time, introduce your companions. A Turvesh student went first. He opened a small box and pulled out something that looked like a beetle the size of a human thumb. Its shell had bright red markings. "This is a warrior beetle from Turvesh Prime," the student announced proudly. "Very fierce. Very dangerous. He can deliver a sting that causes numbness for several minutes." The other students made impressed noises. Professor Quinn's arms rippled in what might have been applause. Next came an Aldari student named Rhea. She released a small flying creature from her container. It had delicate wings and made a soft humming sound as it circled her head. "This is a flutter moth. We raise them for their beautiful songs. They are very gentle." One by one, students showed their pets, glowing jellies that floated in anti-gravity fields, small herbivores that ate special plants, a crystalline creature that sang in harmonics. Even the most impressive ones were small enough to hold in 2 hands. Daniel waited until last. By then, Professor Quinn seemed relaxed. The instructor's breathing sacs inflated and deflated in a steady rhythm that indicated contentment. And finally, our human student. Daniel Reed, correct? "Yes, Professor. What have you brought to share with us?" Daniel wheeled the container forward. It stood almost as tall as his waist and twice as long. "I brought my dog. Her name is Nova." Professor Quinn's breathing sac stuttered. "That container is quite large. How big is this dog?" "About 90 pounds. Maybe 40 kilograms? The room went quiet. Several students backed away. Rhea's flutter moth stopped singing and hid in her hair. 40 kilograms, Professor Quinn repeated. "That is larger than some species in this room." "What does your dog eat?" "Meat mostly. Processed food back home, but she can hunt if she needs to." "Hunt." The professor's arms made a complicated gesture that Daniel's translator couldn't interpret. "Perhaps you should show us this creature. Slowly, please." Daniel unlocked the container's viewing panel and slid it open. Inside, lying on a padded floor, Nova lifted her head. She was a German shepherd, all brown and black fur with alert ears and dark eyes that studied everything. Her mouth opened in a yawn, revealing teeth designed for tearing meat. The yawn seemed to go on forever. Nova's jaws stretched wide enough to fit a Vorlani's entire head inside. Her fangs caught the light from the windows. 3 students fainted. 4 more ran for the exit. Rhea made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. Professor Quinn's breathing sacs completely deflated, and all 8 arms went rigid. Nova finished yawning and looked at Daniel through the opening. Her tail wagged once, making a soft thump against the container wall. To her, this was just another day. To everyone else in the room, a monster had just arrived at the academy. Professor Quinn finally found words. "That is your pet?" Daniel scratched behind Nova's ears through the opening. "Yes, Professor. She's a very good girl." The observation room felt too small. Daniel stood in the center with Nova's container while every other student pressed themselves against the far walls. Professor Quinn had recovered enough to speak, though 2 of the instructor's 8 arms still trembled. "There must be regulations," Quinn said. "Academy policies about dangerous predators, size restrictions, safety requirements." Daniel pulled out his data pad and scrolled through his acceptance documents. "I checked everything twice. The application said to bring a companion animal that demonstrates the bond between species. Nova and I have been together for 6 years. She's fully trained." Trained. Quinn's translator made the word sound like a question and an accusation at the same time. "You mean this creature follows commands?" "Yes, Professor. She works with children back home. She's certified for therapy visits at hospitals." Rhea spoke up from behind a protective barrier. Her voice shook. "That thing goes near children?" "She's gentle," Daniel said. "I promise. Want me to show you?" Several students shouted no at the same time. Professor Quinn raised 3 arms for silence. "If you release that animal, you take full responsibility for anything that happens." "I understand." Daniel opened the container completely. Nova stood up, stretched, and stepped out onto the smooth floor of the observation room. She looked even bigger outside the container. Her shoulders came up to Daniel's waist. Muscles moved under her fur with each step. Her claws clicked against the floor. Every student except Daniel held their breath. Nova sat down beside Daniel and looked up at him. Waiting. "Nova, shake," Daniel said. Nova lifted her right paw. Daniel took it in his hand and moved it up and down. "Good girl." "It understands language?" Quinn asked. "She understands lots of commands." "Watch." "Nova, down." Nova dropped to the floor, belly flat against the ground. Her tail swept back and forth. "Stay." Nova froze. Daniel walked away from her, crossed the room, and stood next to Professor Quinn. Nova's eyes tracked him, but she didn't move. Her muscles stayed relaxed. After 30 seconds, Daniel called out, "Nova, come." She stood and walked to him in a smooth, controlled pace. No running, no jumping. When she reached Daniel, she sat again without being told. Professor Quinn's breathing sacs began working normally again. Remarkable. How long did this training take? We started when she was 8 weeks old. Took about a year for basic commands. But the bond? That's been growing ever since. Bond, Quinn repeated. Explain this concept. Daniel knelt beside Nova and ran his hand along her back. On Earth, humans and wolves started working together thousands of years ago. Wolves helped us hunt. We shared our food with them. Over time, they changed, became dogs. They're part of our families now. You domesticated an apex predator, Quinn said slowly. We became partners. Nova doesn't serve me. She chooses to stay with me. A brave student, a Tervesh named Bron, stepped closer. What happens if she stops choosing? What if she gets hungry and you look like food? Nova's ears swiveled toward Bron's voice, but she remained sitting. Daniel smiled. Dogs don't think like that. When you're part of their pack, they protect you. They'd rather starve than hurt you. Impossible, Bron said. Survival instinct is stronger than any training. Not for dogs. They've evolved with us. We're connected in ways that go beyond instinct. Professor Quinn made notes on a data device. All 8 arms moved in different patterns, writing, gesturing, adjusting controls. I want to document this. Daniel, can your companion interact with other species? She's never met aliens before, but she's good with other animals back home. Rhea, Quinn called. Bring your fluttermoth here. Rhea looked terrified. Professor, no, please. I will be watching carefully. If there is any danger, I will activate the containment field. Rhea crept forward, her fluttermoth clutched in both hands. The small creature's wings barely moved. It could sense the predator nearby. When Rhea got within 3 meters of Nova, she stopped. Closer, Quinn instructed. Professor, science requires risks, Rhea. Come closer. Rhea took 2 more steps. She was now close enough that Nova could reach her in one leap. The fluttermoth made a high-pitched whine of fear. Nova's ears perked up at the sound. Her head tilted to the side. Nova, gentle, Daniel said softly. Nova lowered her head and took 1 slow step toward Rhea, then another. Rhea froze completely, her skin shifting through 3 different colors of terror. Nova stretched her neck forward and sniffed the fluttermoth. Her nose was larger than the entire small creature. The fluttermoth's wings buzzed frantically. Nova pulled her head back and sneezed. The fluttermoth's wings tickled her nose. See, Daniel said. She knows it's not prey. She's just curious. Nova returned to Daniel's side and sat down again, looking proud of herself. Rhea stumbled backward, clutching her fluttermoth close. The small creature buried itself in her hair. Incredible, Professor Quinn muttered. The predator showed restraint, recognized another student's companion as off-limits. That's what training and trust do, Daniel explained. Nova understands the situation. She knows these are my friends, so they're her friends too. Braun stepped forward. I still don't believe it. 1 moment of control doesn't prove safety. What happens in an emergency? What if something triggers her hunting instincts? Professor Quinn's arms went still. An excellent question. Tomorrow we conduct practical examinations in the Biodome. All companions will demonstrate their abilities in a natural environment. We will see how your Nova performs under less controlled conditions. Daniel felt a small knot of worry form in his stomach. The Biodome meant space to run, things to chase, unpredictable situations. Nova was well trained, but she was still a dog, still a predator. He trusted her completely. But could he trust the environment? Nova leaned against his leg, her warmth solid and reassuring. She looked up at him with complete confidence. Whatever happened tomorrow, they would face it together. That's what pack meant. Professor Quinn dismissed the class. As students filed out, they gave Nova a wide circle of space. Daniel heard them whispering to each other in a dozen different languages. Their translators picked up words like dangerous, insane, and monster. Daniel scratched behind Nova's ears. Don't listen to them, girl. They'll understand eventually. Nova's tail wagged. She didn't care what anyone thought. She had Daniel, and that was enough. Sunlight filtered through the Biodome's transparent ceiling, creating patterns on the forest floor below. Daniel stood at the entrance with 22 other students, each one holding or standing near their companion. The Biodome stretched out before them like a piece of captured wilderness, complete with real trees, flowing water, and open meadows. Nova sat perfectly still beside Daniel, but every muscle in her body was coiled tight. Her nose twitched as she processed 1,000 new smells. Her ears rotated toward every sound. Daniel could feel the energy radiating off her. This was the most stimulating environment she had experienced since leaving Earth. Remember, Professor Quinn announced, all 8 arms spread for attention. This exercise tests your bond with your companion. You must demonstrate control, communication, and cooperation. Each team will perform individually, while others observe from the safe zone. The first few demonstrations went smoothly. Rhea's fluttermoth performed a synchronized flight pattern with her movements. Bronze warrior beetle dug complicated tunnels in a sandpit. A Frelan student's glowing jelly changed colors to match emotional states. Each performance lasted about 5 minutes. Daniel watched carefully, noting how the other students interacted with their companions. The relationship seemed simple. Commands given, commands followed. Nothing like what he had with Nova. His bond with her went deeper than obedience. It was partnership, trust, mutual respect. Daniel Reed, Professor Quinn called. You and Nova are next. Daniel led Nova into the demonstration area. Several students activated their recording devices. This would be the most talked about presentation of the day, for better or worse. What will you show us? Quinn asked. Basic commands first, then some advanced work, Daniel said. Nova, heel. Nova moved to his left side, matching his pace perfectly as he walked. Her shoulder aligned with his leg. When he stopped, she stopped. When he turned, she turned. Down. Nova dropped to the ground. Stay. Daniel walked 50 meters away, disappearing behind a cluster of trees. Nova remained motionless, staring at the spot where Daniel had vanished. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. Students began whispering. Was the dog confused, lost? Daniel whistled once, high and sharp. Nova's head snapped toward the sound. She didn't move. Nova, come. She launched forward, running at full speed. Her legs ate up the distance in powerful strides. She dodged trees, leaped over a small stream, and found Daniel in seconds. She slid to a stop at his feet, tail wagging furiously. Good girl, Daniel said, kneeling to hug her. Such a good girl. They walked back to the center of the demonstration area. Professor Quinn's arms rippled with what might have been approval. Impressive speed and recall. What else can she do? Search and retrieve. Nova, find. Daniel threw a small training dummy into the tall grass near the edge of the demonstration area. Nova tracked its arc through the air and marked where it landed. When Daniel gave the command, she sprinted to the spot and began searching. Her nose swept the ground in systematic patterns. Within 20 seconds, she found the dummy and brought it back, placing it gently in Daniel's hand. Excellent, Quinn said. Her hunting instincts are well controlled. The alarm chimed somewhere above them. Daniel looked up. A maintenance drone floated near the Biodome's upper supports, checking environmental systems. The drone was small, about the size of a basketball, with multiple rotors keeping it airborne. Ignore that, Quinn said. Continue your demonstration. Daniel started to show how Nova could move through an obstacle course. She jumped over logs, crawled under low barriers, and balanced on narrow beams. The students seemed genuinely impressed now. Even Braun had stopped making sarcastic comments. The maintenance drone's rotors began making a strange sound. A high-pitched whine, then a grinding noise. The drone wobbled in the air. Its flight pattern became erratic. Nova's ears shot up. Her entire body went rigid. She locked onto the drone's movement, watching it dip and spin above them. Nova, focus, Daniel said. He recognized that look. Prey drive. The drone's unpredictable movement triggered something deep in her brain, something that lived before thousands of years of domestication. The drone's rotors screamed. It dropped 10 meters, then shot sideways. Nova's lips pulled back from her teeth. A low growl built in her chest. Nova, no. Stay. The drone spiraled downward, losing control. Its erratic flight brought it close to Professor Quinn, who was studying a datapad and hadn't noticed the malfunction. The machine spun past the professor's head, rotors buzzing like angry insects. Nova moved before Daniel could react. She broke the stay command and launched herself forward. Her powerful legs propelled her across the ground faster than anything that size should move. Students screamed. Professor Quinn looked up just in time to see 90 pounds of predator coming straight toward them. Nova, stop! Daniel shouted. He ran after her, but she had too much of a head start. The drone swooped low again, its path weaving drunkenly through the air. Nova's eyes never left it. She gathered herself and jumped, jaws open wide. Time seemed to slow down. Nova's arc through the air would bring her directly into Professor Quinn's position. The instructor's breathing sacs locked up in terror. All 8 arms went rigid. The Prelian couldn't move, couldn't think, could only watch death approach on 4 legs with teeth bared. Daniel's emergency whistle was already at his lips. He blew it with all the force he could manage. The sound cut through the biodome like a knife, high and piercing and impossible to ignore. Nova's ears flattened against her head. Her body twisted in midair, fighting momentum and instinct at the same time. Her jaws snapped shut on something small and mechanical. She hit the ground 3 feet from Professor Quinn and rolled, protecting whatever she had caught. The biodome went silent except for the sound of students breathing hard and Quinn's translator clicking rapidly without producing words. Nova stood up, the mangled maintenance drone clamped in her jaws. Sparks dripped from the broken machine. She walked to Daniel and dropped it at his feet. Then she sat, tail low, waiting to find out if she was in trouble. Her eyes met his, and Daniel saw the confusion there. She had caught the dangerous thing. She had protected everyone. Why did Daniel look so scared? Security drones descended from the ceiling, tranquilizer protocols active and ready. They surrounded Nova with weapons trained on her from every angle. Daniel stepped between Nova and the security drones without thinking. His heart hammered against his ribs, but his hands were steady. Behind him, Nova pressed against his legs. She could feel the danger even if she didn't understand it. "Stand away from the animal," a security drone announced. "It has demonstrated aggression and must be contained." "She's not aggressive," Daniel said. His voice came out stronger than he felt. "Look at what she caught." That drone malfunctioned. Nova stopped it before it could hurt anyone. Professor Quinn had collapsed onto the grass. 3 of 8 arms had given out completely. The other 5 trembled as they tried to support the instructor's weight. 2 students rushed over to help while everyone else stayed frozen in shock. "The animal charged a faculty member," the security drone continued. "Protocols require immediate sedation and removal." "She charged a broken machine," Daniel shot back. "There's a difference." He turned to look at Nova. She sat behind him with the destroyed drone still at her feet. Her tail was tucked low, ears back. She knew something was wrong but couldn't understand what. In her mind, she had done her job. She had stopped the threat. Now everyone was pointing weapons at her. Daniel knelt and put his hand on her head. "It's okay, girl." "You're okay." Nova leaned into his touch. She trusted him completely, even now with danger surrounding them. That trust made Daniel's chest ache. How could he explain to these people what Nova really was? How could they understand a bond that humans had spent 20,000 years building? "Professor Quinn," Daniel called out. "You saw what happened. Tell them." The instructor managed to stand with help from the students. Quinn's breathing sacs worked in short, rapid bursts. Several arms hung limp while others gestured shakily. I need to review the recordings." "Then review them now," Daniel said, "before you let security punish Nova for protecting you." Professor Quinn pulled out a datapad with 1 functioning arm. The other students crowded around to watch. Daniel stayed where he was, one hand on Nova's head, his body still blocking the security drones. The recording played on Quinn's screen. Daniel couldn't see it from his position, but he heard the sound. His own voice shouting commands. Nova's growl. The drone's malfunctioning rotors. Then the whistle blast and the moment of impact. Quinn played it again, slower this time. Then a 3rd time from a different camera angle. The students whispered to each other. Their translators created a murmur of overlapping languages. "Stop the recording there," Braun said suddenly. His voice sounded different, less hostile. "Look at her trajectory." "I see it," Rhea added. "She's not aimed at Professor Quinn. She's following the drone's path." Professor Quinn zoomed in on a single frame. Nova was frozen in midair. Her body twisted sideways, jaws extended toward the spinning machine. Quinn's position was close, dangerously close, but Nova's attack angle showed her target clearly. "The drone, not the person." "And here," Quinn said, advancing the recording 1 frame at a time. "When the human makes that sound, watch what happens." The whistle blast appeared on the audio display as a sharp spike. In the next frame, Nova's body began to change position. Her ears moved back. Her jaw started to close. By the 3rd frame after the whistle, she had abandoned the attack completely and was preparing to land. "She obeyed," Quinn said quietly. In the middle of a hunting response with her instincts fully engaged, she heard her human and obeyed. One of the security drones spoke. The animal still posed a threat to Academy personnel. "No," Professor Quinn said, stronger now. "The drone posed the threat. Look at the damage analysis. That machine's rotors were failing. If it had continued flying, it could have struck a student. The shrapnel alone might have caused serious injury." Quinn pulled up another file showing the broken drone's internal systems. Multiple components had been failing. The machine had been seconds away from complete mechanical breakdown. "Nova stopped it," Daniel said. "That's what she's trained to do. Stop threats." "By nearly colliding with a professor," the security drone countered. "By stopping the actual danger," Daniel corrected. "She assessed the situation faster than any of us. She saw the broken drone, recognized it as a threat, and eliminated it. The fact that she did this while avoiding Professor Quinn proves how much control she has." Braun stepped forward. "I owe you an apology, Daniel. I said survival instinct was stronger than training. Your dog just proved me wrong. She had every reason to ignore you. Her brain was telling her to chase, to catch, to bite. But your command was stronger. It's not about commands being stronger, Daniel explained. It's about trust. Nova trusts me to make good decisions. When I tell her to stop, she believes I have a good reason even if she doesn't understand it. Professor Quinn spoke to the security drones. Stand down. There will be no sedation or removal. The animal acted to protect Academy personnel, not threaten them. The drones hesitated, then withdrew. Their weapons powered down and they returned to their ceiling positions. Daniel felt his legs go weak with relief. He sat down on the grass next to Nova and hugged her. Good girl, he whispered. You did so good. Nova's tail wagged once, uncertain. She licked his face and pressed closer. Professor Quinn approached slowly. All 8 arms were functioning again, though their movements were still shaky. I would like to apologize, Daniel. And to Nova. I did not understand the nature of your relationship. I still find it terrifying, but I am beginning to see why humans would form such bonds. Why? Daniel asked. Because on a world dangerous enough to produce predators like this, you needed allies who could match those dangers. You didn't tame the wolves. You recruited them. Something like that, Daniel agreed. Quinn looked at the broken drone, then at Nova, then at Daniel. This incident raises important questions about the nature of domestication, instinct versus training, and interspecies cooperation. I would like to continue studying your relationship with Nova, if you are willing. Does that mean we can stay? It means I have much to learn from both of you. Professor Quinn's arms made a complicated gesture that the translator rendered as respectful acknowledgement. And it means that tomorrow evening I will visit your quarters. We need to have a long discussion about humans and their impossible choice to live with predators. Daniel smiled. We'd be happy to talk with you, Professor. That night, back in his small academy quarters, Daniel lay on his bunk with Nova sprawled across the end. She took up most of the bed, as usual. Her soft snoring filled the quiet room. Daniel pulled up his datapad and started reading about Prelian body language. If they were going to have that discussion tomorrow, he wanted to understand Professor Quinn's reactions better. Nova shifted in her sleep, her paws twitching as she dreamed of chasing something. What are you dreaming about, girl? Daniel asked softly. That drone? Or maybe just running? Nova's tail thumped once against the bed. Even in sleep, she heard his voice and responded to it. 20,000 years of evolution had created this moment, this impossible partnership between predator and prey species learning to trust each other. Daniel closed his datapad and scratched behind Nova's ears. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more questions, more opportunities to prove that the bond between humans and dogs was real. But tonight they could just rest together. Pack meant never being alone. A soft chime at the door announced Professor Quinn's arrival. Daniel checked the time and realized he had been studying for 3 hours straight. Nova lifted her head from where she had been sleeping across his feet, ears alert. Come in. Professor? Daniel called out. The door slid open and Quinn entered carefully. All 8 arms held in a neutral position that Daniel's research told him meant peaceful intentions. Nova watched the professor but didn't move from her position on the bunk. Thank you for agreeing to this discussion, Quinn said. The translator rendered the professor's tone as curious rather than fearful. Progress, Daniel thought. Of course. Want to sit? Daniel gestured to the room's single chair. Quinn settled into it, arranging limbs in a complicated pattern. 4 arms rested on armrests while the others held various positions that Daniel couldn't quite interpret. I have been reviewing literature about Earth species since yesterday's incident. The information available is limited and much of it seems unbelievable. Like what? Daniel closed his datapad and gave the professor his full attention. I read that humans domesticated wolves 20,000 years ago. Not small scavengers or herbivores, but apex predators. Pack hunters capable of taking down prey many times their size, that's right. Why? Quinn's arms made a gesture of complete confusion. Every other species in the galaxy domesticated animals that posed no threat. Creatures that provided food, transportation, or labor. You chose to bring predators into your homes. Daniel thought about how to explain it. Earth was dangerous, Professor. Really dangerous. Humans weren't the biggest or strongest or fastest. We didn't have claws or armor or venom. We had intelligence and endurance, but that wasn't always enough. So you allied with creatures that did have those advantages. More than that, we found creatures who were like us. Wolves lived in packs like humans lived in tribes. They hunted cooperatively. They cared for their young and their elderly. They communicated with complex social signals. When humans and wolves looked at each other, we recognized something familiar. Nova shifted on the bed, her eyes moving between Daniel and Quinn as if following the conversation. One of her ears rotated toward the professor while the other stayed focused on Daniel. "She is listening to us," Quinn observed. "She always listens. Dogs pay attention to everything their pack does. It's part of how they survived. They needed to understand human communication to work with us. And humans needed to understand them," Quinn added. "This is a two-way relationship." "Exactly." Daniel reached down to scratch Nova's head. She leaned into his touch without taking her eyes off Quinn. "I know what Nova's different barks mean. I can read her body language. When her ears go back like this, it means she's uncertain. When her tail is high and wagging fast, she's excited. When she yawns during a tense moment, she's trying to calm everyone down. Sophisticated communication between species," Quinn said. "We have achieved this with technology. Translator devices, universal language protocols. You did it through evolution and observation. We needed each other. Wolves helped humans hunt. They warned us about dangers we couldn't see or smell. They kept us warm in cold weather. In return, we shared our food and our fires. We protected wolf pups. Over time, the wolves that were better at understanding humans survived better. They had more puppies. Those puppies inherited the traits that made cooperation easier. And this process created dogs. Right. Dogs aren't just tame wolves. They're different. They evolved to read human facial expressions, to understand pointing gestures, to feel genuine affection for us. Nova doesn't stay with me because I feed her. She stays because we're family." Professor Quinn's breathing sacs worked in a slow, thoughtful rhythm. "On my world, we have domesticated several species, but they remain fundamentally separate from us. We do not invite them into our homes. We do not sleep near them. The idea of physical contact with an animal is unusual. But you're here now," Daniel pointed out. "In the same room with Nova. Yesterday you were terrified. Yesterday I did not understand. Today I'm beginning to see that my fear was based on incomplete information." Quinn leaned forward slightly. "May I ask Nova a question?" Daniel smiled. "She can't talk back, Professor. I understand. But perhaps she can answer through her behavior. Nova, may I approach you?" Nova's tail wagged slightly. Her ears stayed up and alert, but not aggressive. Daniel nodded. "She's okay with it. Move slowly, though. Let her sniff your hand first." Quinn stood and walked toward the bunk with careful steps. Two arms extended slowly, keeping the others pulled back in a non-threatening posture. Nova watched the approach with interest, her nose working to process the professor's scent. "That's close enough," Daniel said when Quinn was about a meter away. "Let her come to you if she wants." They waited. Nova looked at Daniel, then at Quinn, then back to Daniel. She was checking to see if this was okay, if this stranger was friend or threat. Daniel kept his body relaxed and his voice calm. "It's okay, girl. Quinn is a friend." Nova slid off the bed and approached the professor. Her movements were slow and deliberate, giving Quinn plenty of time to react if needed. She sniffed the extended arms, taking in information that only her nose could detect. Then she sat down in front of Quinn and offered her paw. "What does this mean?" Quinn asked. "It's a greeting. Take her paw gently in your hands and move it up and down. It's called shaking hands." Quinn used two arms to carefully grasp Nova's paw and performed the gesture. Nova's tail wagged. The professor's breathing sacs inflated with something that might have been delight. "Remarkable," Quinn whispered. "She initiated contact with me. A predator chose to interact peacefully with a potential prey species. Because she trusts my judgment," Daniel explained. "I told her you're a friend. That's all she needed to know." Quinn released Nova's paw and stepped back. Nova returned to the bunk and settled next to Daniel, resting her head on his lap. "I think I'm beginning to understand why this relationship disturbs other species so much. Because it shouldn't be possible? Because it reveals something about humans that is more frightening than any predator. You do not conquer your world's dangers. You do not hide from them or try to eliminate them. You befriend them. You form emotional bonds with creatures that could kill you. This suggests a level of confidence or perhaps madness that other species cannot comprehend." Daniel laughed. "Maybe a little of both. But think about what it means, Professor. If humans can form these kinds of bonds with Earth's predators, imagine what we can do with the rest of the galaxy. We don't see other species as threats first. We see potential friends, potential family. A dangerous philosophy. Maybe, but it's gotten us pretty far. Nova and I are proof that it works." Quinn's arms rippled in a pattern Daniel's research suggested meant deep thought. I would like to propose something. Rather than simply observing your relationship with Nova, I want to make it an official case study. You would participate in regular assessments, interviews, behavioral observations. In exchange, you would receive full academic credit and immunity from any regulations about keeping dangerous animals on the station. What kind of assessments? Nothing harmful. Mostly documentation of how you and Nova interact in different situations, how she responds to stress, how you communicate without words, how your bond manifests in practical scenarios. Daniel looked down at Nova. She gazed back at him with complete trust. What do you think, girl? Want to teach the galaxy about dogs? Nova's tail thumped against the bed. She didn't understand the words, but she understood Daniel's tone. Whatever he wanted to do, she would support him. We'll do it, Daniel told Quinn. On one condition. What condition? You have to participate too. Not just observe. I want you to spend time with Nova. Learn to read her signals, maybe even try giving her some commands. You can't really understand this bond from the outside. Professor Quinn's breathing sac stuttered. You want me to interact directly with an apex predator? I want you to interact with my friend, Daniel corrected. There's a difference. 3 weeks had passed since Professor Quinn's visit to Daniel's quarters. Now Daniel stood at the entrance to the advanced Biodome, a much larger facility than the one where Nova had caught the malfunctioning drone. Every student in the xenobiology program waited in the observation deck above, their faces pressed against the transparent floor to watch what would happen below. Nova sat beside Daniel, calm and patient. She wore a special harness that monitored her vital signs and transmitted them to Quinn's datapad. Her heart rate was steady, her breathing normal. She had no idea that today would determine whether she could stay at the academy. Professor Quinn stood on the observation deck with the academic review board. 4 species were represented, each one an expert in comparative biology or interspecies relations. They had spent the past 3 weeks reviewing data about Nova, watching recordings of her interactions, and debating whether a predator belonged at an institution of learning. This is your final assessment, Quinn announced through the comm system. You will face 3 scenarios designed to test the limits of your bond. Nova must make independent choices that demonstrate intelligence, restraint, and genuine understanding of social context. Daniel, you may not give any commands during the 3rd scenario. Nova must act on her own judgment. Daniel's stomach tightened. Understood, Professor. Begin Scenario 1. A section of the Biodome floor slid open. A mechanical dummy rose from below, designed to look like an injured student. It made distressed sounds and moved weakly. Daniel recognized the setup immediately. Search and rescue. Nova, find. Nova's ears perked up. She looked at Daniel, then at the Biodome. He gestured forward and she took off running. Her nose led her across the open ground, through a cluster of trees and into a ravine where the dummy had fallen. She found it within 40 seconds, assessed that it was too heavy to carry, and ran back to Daniel. Where is it, girl? Show me. Nova turned and ran back toward the ravine, checking over her shoulder to make sure Daniel followed. She led him directly to the dummy and sat beside it, waiting for praise. Good girl, Nova. Excellent work. The observation deck erupted in quiet conversation. The review board members made notes on their datapads. Scenario 2, Quinn announced. The Biodome's environmental controls activated. Wind picked up, carrying dozens of conflicting scents. Holographic projections appeared throughout the space, showing movement in every direction. Sounds played from hidden speakers. Barking, howling, mechanical noises, animal calls, everything designed to confuse and overstimulate. Nova, heel. Nova moved to Daniel's side. Her head swiveled toward every distraction, her body tense with the desire to investigate. But she stayed at heel position. They walked through the chaos together, Nova maintaining perfect discipline despite every instinct telling her to chase, to explore, to respond to the calls that sounded like other dogs. Stay. Daniel walked away, disappearing behind a holographic barrier. Nova remained in place. The distractions continued. A holographic rabbit bounded past her. A speaker near her head blasted a recording of a squeaky toy. Another dog's bark echoed through the biodome. Nova's tail twitched. Her front paws shifted slightly, but she didn't break the stay command. Come. She bolted to him, dodging holograms and ignoring sounds that would drive most dogs crazy. When she reached Daniel, she pressed against his legs, seeking reassurance. You're doing great, he whispered. Just one more test. Scenario 3, Professor Quinn said. This is the final assessment. Daniel, you will be disabled for this scenario. You may not speak, gesture, or communicate in any way. Nova must make her own choices. Daniel's heart rate jumped. What's the scenario? You will see. Take your position in the center of the biodome. Daniel walked to the marked spot with Nova beside him. She sensed his nervousness and kept looking up at him, checking to see if everything was okay. Begin, Quinn said. Daniel felt something clamp around his ankles. Mechanical restraints had emerged from the floor, locking him in place. At the same time, a collar activated around his neck, not painful but clearly restricting. He couldn't turn his head, couldn't move his arms more than a few inches. Nova barked once, sharp and worried. She circled Daniel, trying to understand what had happened. Then Professor Quinn entered the biodome. The professor moved quickly toward Daniel, all 8 arms extended. To Nova, it must have looked like an attack. Daniel wanted to speak, to tell her it was okay, but the collar prevented it. This was the test. Would Nova protect him by attacking, or would she recognize Quinn as a friend despite the threatening appearance? Nova positioned herself between Daniel and the approaching professor. Her lips pulled back, showing teeth. A growl built in her chest. Every line of her body said danger, stay back, threat detected. Quinn kept coming, moving faster now. The professor's arms reached toward Daniel. Nova's growl deepened. Her haunches gathered for a leap. This was the moment. Nova had to choose between her protective instincts and her trust in Daniel's previous teachings. She had to decide if Quinn was really a threat or if this was something else. Time stretched out. Nova's muscles were coiled, ready to attack. Quinn's arms were seconds from touching Daniel. The observation deck went completely silent. Nova broke her aggressive stance. She stepped back and whined, looking between Daniel and Quinn. Her tail tucked low, not in fear but in confusion. She didn't understand what was happening, but she understood something crucial. Daniel had brought her to this place. Daniel had spent weeks teaching her that Quinn was safe. If this was really an attack, Daniel would have prepared her for it. She chose trust over instinct. Quinn reached Daniel and removed the restraints. The collar deactivated. Daniel immediately knelt and hugged Nova, his hands shaking. You did it, girl. You understood. You trusted me even when I couldn't help you. Nova licked his face and pressed against him. She had been so scared, so confused, but she had made the right choice. The observation deck erupted in applause. Students from a dozen different species celebrated. All fear of Nova forgotten. They had just witnessed something impossible. A predator choosing peace when every instinct screamed for violence. Professor Quinn approached slowly. Nova watched but didn't growl. May I? Quinn asked, extending 2 arms. Daniel nodded. Quinn placed both arms on Nova's head in a gesture of respect. You have taught us something profound today, Nova. Not just about dogs, but about the nature of intelligence itself. You made a choice that required you to override millions of years of evolution. That is remarkable. The review board descended to the biodome floor. A Frelin board member spoke first. We have reached a decision. Daniel, Reed, and Nova are approved to continue their studies. Furthermore, we are establishing a new field of research at the Academy, comparative bonding studies, with Professor Quinn as director and Daniel as the primary research assistant. Daniel stood, keeping one hand on Nova's head. Thank you. All of you. Do not thank us, another board member said. You and your companion have expanded our understanding of what is possible. That is the purpose of the Academy. To learn, to question, to discover. That evening, Daniel sat in his quarters writing a message to his family back on Earth. Nova sprawled across the bed, exhausted from the day's events but content. Dear Mom and Dad, he typed. Today Nova and I proved something important. We showed them that the bond between humans and dogs isn't just training or obedience. It's real partnership, built on 20,000 years of choosing each other. They were scared of her at first. They couldn't understand why we would trust predators. But now they're starting to see what we've always known. The scariest thing about humans isn't our technology or our adaptability. It's our ability to make friends with anything, even creatures designed to hunt us. We don't conquer our world. We befriend it. And maybe that's the real reason we'll succeed out here among the stars. He looked down at Nova. She had rolled onto her back, legs in the air, snoring softly, completely vulnerable and completely trusting. I think that's what makes us dangerous, he added to his message. Not that we survived Earth, but how we survived. We turned our greatest threats into our closest family. We earned the loyalty of apex predators. And now we're here, teaching the galaxy that the line between predator and friend isn't as clear as they thought. Nova's tail thumped against the bed in her sleep. Even unconscious, she responded to the sound of his voice. Daniel smiled and closed his data pad. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, new opportunities to show what humans and dogs could accomplish together. But tonight, he just wanted to rest beside his best friend and remember that some bonds transcended species, language, and even the vast distances between worlds. Professor Quinn had been right about one thing. The relationship between humans and dogs was frightening. Not because of violence or danger, but because it proved that love could bridge any gap, overcome any difference, and turn the impossible into simple truth. Nova was dangerous. She was a predator, descended from wolves, equipped with teeth and instincts designed for hunting, but she was also his partner, his companion, his family, and that combination, that perfect balance of power and devotion, was something the galaxy had never seen before. It was the most human thing imaginable.